how to submit community partner payments. So I'm going to start with our agenda here. So just tell you what I'm talking about. First, I'm going to define what community partner payments are, how to set up the supplier and what documentation you will need, and also provide some step-by-step instructions on how to request the payment for community partners, as well as donations. I'll also relieve you some resources and also how to get help if you have additional questions. So just diving right in, what is a community partner? Community partner payment is payments provided to community-based individuals or organizations for service such as advisory boards or other bodies that benefit the university. Types of activities for payment may include serving on UCSF non-academic committees or advisory boards, community non-academic guest speakers or panelists, or community-based organizations who host students for community-engaged learning opportunities. Now, there are some things that don't qualify as community partner payments, and they can include items such as honorarium payments are generally to individuals of scholarly standing, and there's a list of academic activities that they have. There's also not allowed for consulting service payments, payments linked to a defined scope of work for professional services, research participant payments, or payment to faculty and staff. All these other types of payments have different channels and are not covered in the community partner payments that we're discussing today. So first thing you want to do when you want to make a payment is you have to make sure that they are set up as a supplier within Bearby. So you want to confirm if they are in Bearby. If they're not listed in Bearby, they must be set up. We have instructions on our website on a page called Doing Business with UCSF. It involves the community partner completing the UCSF Supplier Information Form, or Substitute W-9. It is an IRS regulations that the university is required to have all payees complete that information. So that after that form is completed, it can be emailed to us at vendors@ucsf.edu so we can set up the supplier in Bearby. Also, if you do notice that the community partner is in Bearby, but their address is incorrect, you will also need to have them fill out the supplier information form, Substitute W-9, with the new address, so then ensure that we have it in our system and can send them the payment at their address. So once the community partner is in Bearby, you can proceed on submitting the request for payment. One tip is you want to make sure that you submit the request as soon as the work is complete so you can get ahead of it and facilitate timely payment to the community partner. You also need documentation for the payment to the community partner as well. Ensure that you have one of the following pieces of documentation. You can have an invitation letter to the community partner, an outline of their work, a signed memorandum of understanding, or an invoice from the community partner. All the documentation, whatever you choose to submit or whatever you have, must have the community partner's name, the amount that they will be paid, full details of the work that they are doing to justify the payment, including the official university business purpose for the work. And also, if you have it, we would like to also have the community partner's address. And why we paid. If the documentation is missing or incomplete, that will delay your payment. So you always want to ensure that you have the complete documentation in advance of requesting your payment. So you want to work on that when you first start engaging the community partner. So now let's move on to how do you request payment. So you do request payment within Bearby, and you access the system through UCSF My Access. So you log into My Access, and then you look for the Bearby link, which I've highlighted there, and you click on it, and it opens the system. Once you're in Bearby from the home page, you want to scroll down to the bottom where the frequently used forms section is. Then there's an icon called the payment request form. You click it, and the form will open. So you're going to be asked for information. So you want to complete all the field, and we'll go through them here. So the first thing you want to enter in the enter supplier field is the supplier's name. for the community partner's name. So start typing in and see, what appears in the list. In this example, once your community partner name appears, click on it. Make sure you're selecting the right one. Some people do have very similar names, so you want to make sure that it is the exact one. Next, there will be a question of whether an attachment to your check payment is required. And generally you want to answer no, because we generally don't need to send them documentation associated with the payment. And also, if you do want something attached, it will lengthen the time for payment. So it's recommended that you don't ask us to send in any attachments, and you select no in this question. Another question is, do you need to include a payment message? So we can include some note with the payment. You can select yes, only if it is required to have this message. If your community partner knows exactly what this payment is for, you don't have to put that on there. If you don't need a message, select no in that section. In the next field, the payment message, that's where you want to type in the message if you have one and if it is necessary. The next section on the form is the remit to address, which is the address that we will be making the payment. Now, this is good for several reasons. One is you can confirm, right, that this is where the payment should be sent, and you are responsible for ensuring that the address is correct. Because let's say the community partner moved and we don't have the updated address, we can only send the address, the check to this address that they have provided. So if they have a new one, it does need to be updated. And again, like I mentioned earlier, the supplier information form or substitute W-9 does need to be sent to us again if the address has changed. Sometimes also community partners may have more than one address on record. So you want to make sure that you select the right one. We typically default to a main one. As you can see here, there's a selection in the radio button. So if that's not the right one and there's multiple, make sure that you choose another one. But generally, you can just verify that it is the correct address. And if it's correct, you can move on. But if there needs to be corrections, then you need to follow the directions for the supplier information form, substitute W-9. The next section is you would select the activity type. So we do have a new selection. It's called Community Partner Payments to distinguish these types of payments. So it's available beginning today. The next section, you will want to put a product description. So you want to enter a description and reason for a payment, just something really short. So at a glance, if you ever look back on this payment, or we can look at it and go, okay, this is what this payment is for. And it's also helpful for your approvers as well. As they're looking at it, they may wonder, what is this payment for? So you want to put a good description so it's clear to everyone who's reviewing the request. Next, there is a section for supplier invoice number. So if your community partner provided an invoice, typically it has a number. So you want to put that number there. It helps the community partner determine, okay, what is this payment for? But sometimes you may not have an invoice. So if you don't have that, we do need something. So you can just enter the year, month, and day. So for example, let's say you're making a payment on October 2nd, 2024, you would put 2024-10-02. The next section is an invoice date. So again, typically it reflects your documentation that you have. If you have an invoice, typically there is a date, so put that date on there. If there's no date provided, you do need to put a date. And maybe what you can determine is maybe when the community partner completed the work. So you can put that date, on the form as well. So the next thing is that you need to put the amount, right? How much are you going to pay the community partner? So ensure that you're putting an accurate amount and that it reflects your documentation, because whatever you put that there, that's what we will pay. So you want to be accurate in this field. There's also another question: does this payment include sales tax? And generally it does not, because they're providing services not good. So typically you would select no to this question. Also, there's required attachments. So you want to attach all supporting documentation or your invoice if you have it. So the section we covered earlier about documentation, you want to attach it here to back up and explain your payment and who we're paying to. So to do that, at the bottom in the attachment section, there's an add link, as you can see there. It will open a new window where you can browse your computer for the document. You can select it and then wait for the document to load, and then you can click the Save Changes button, and it will attach the document to your payment request form. So as you can see at the very bottom. Now that's completing the entire payment request form. You're ready to add the form to the cart. So you scroll all the way back up to the top of the payment request form, and there's an add and go to cart button. So you just click that and the form will be then added into your cart. So I have a screenshot down there showing the line item, which is your form that you just completed. Then you can check out of your cart. So you click the Proceed to Checkout button on the upper right-hand side of your screen. From here, you can enter the procurement depth code and shipping address. You go into these sections here and you click the little pencil icon, and then it will open up windows for you to enter values. Now, sometimes if you're not actually placing order, you're only a shopper, you may have your Bearby requester enter this information, but definitely you can enter this information as appropriate as well. You also want to enter your accounting codes, which is the funding that you will be paying this payment out of. So under the requisition summary tab, there is a section for accounting codes. And again, you click the pencil, as seen in that screenshot there, and then you enter the value. So you can either enter the charge fields individually, or you can enter a speed type, which is a shortcut for your chart fields. So make sure you enter either speed type or NA if you're going to enter chart fields in the other fields. Now your cart is complete. So if you are a Bearby requester who has the ability to place orders within Bearby, you will see the place order button. So click on that, and then it will route your request to an approver to review within your own department. However, if you can't place orders and you're a Bearby shopper, you can click the Assign Cart button to send the cart to your requester in your department to help you submit the request for you. And then what happens next? So after you have placed your order or submitted your request for payment in Bearby, the requisition is created and will route for approval within your department. So you can track the approvals on the requisition. There's a approval flow that you can see. You want to make sure that your department requisition approver does approve in a timely manner, because if they're not approving, we do not get the voucher to be able to work on the payment. So it's very important that your department submits it, ensures it's complete, and gets it approved by your department so that we can get it as soon as possible to start working on the payment. So after your department fully approves the requisition, the voucher will be created in the system and will route to supply chain management for us to review. Now we check for the completeness of the request and that all documentation is attached. If the request is incomplete, it will delay payment because we'll have to reach out to whoever submitted the request and ask questions or ask for missing documentation. So you want to make sure everything is complete, everything is clear and submitted to us. It makes approval and review of the transactions a lot faster. So on average, the voucher will be approved in a few business days if it's all complete, but do allow up to 10 business days depending on the volume of requests for the approval to occur on our end. But we're definitely going to try to prioritize, some of these payments to get them out as quickly as possible. If the community partner is receiving a check as their payment method, it will be mailed through the U.S. Postal Service, which can take a few days. So that's just something to keep in mind. So how do you check payment status? So you can always navigate back into Bearby and search for the voucher. So from the side navigation bar within Bearby, you go under Orders, Search, and you search for the voucher. You can enter different criteria in the top quick search bar, such as invoice number, voucher number, PO number, supplier, participant, lots of different things. Then you can click on the magnifying glass to execute the search. And then it can bring up vouchers that meet your criteria. And you can click on the voucher number to open the actual voucher. When you're in the voucher, there's a lot of different things that you can take a look at to see where it is in status. So under the pay status, it may be paid, which means the payment has been issued, in process, which means it is pending review, or payable, which means it has been approved and it's just waiting for payment. And most community partners are the individuals, they pay soon after we approve them. But some organizations, they do have net terms that are longer than a few days. It could be net 30. So it won't pay until actually it meets that net term after approval. The approval workflow is also listed on the right side, so highlighted there, so you can see where it is in the workflow and where it may be pending approval. So as I mentioned before, payable invoices are fully approved and pending payment, and you can see the status on the voucher itself. When within the voucher summary tab, if the invoice has been paid, you can scroll to the payment information section and see the actual payment details. The payment details will appear in Bear By the next business day after the payment was issued. In this example, a check was issued, so you can see the payment method was check. You see the check number, and also you see the date that was issued. The payment method typically is either check or ACH with these types of payments. So sometimes your community partner may agree to do the work, but they're like, we don't want the payment directly. We'd like to donate it to a charity, which you definitely can do. A few things to keep in mind about that is you want to make sure that the community partner requests that the payment be donated in writing in advance of the activity. So you don't want them to decide after they do the work, you want them to do it before, because they may have some tax liability if they decline afterwards. So you definitely want to work with them upfront to donate their payment to a charity so they don't have tax liability for the payment. For documentation of these payments, you must obtain approvals on a charitable donation or contributions supplemental form that it goes through Community and Government Relations. And we have a process that we partnered with them on, published on our website, called the Donations and Charitable Contributions page. So you can follow those instructions to get that approval. Once you do get the approval, you can submit the payment on the payment request form as well. So in a similar fashion that we talked about earlier in the presentation, with a few changes. Ensure that the charity is in Bear By and that their address is correct. And again, they will have to fill out the UCSF supplier information form and substitute W-9. In Bear By, instead of selecting the community partner, you would select the charity's name. The activity type instead would be donation or / contribution. And you would attach the charitable donations or contributions supplemental form to the payment request form to request payment. I also want to leave you with some resources. Our website has a lot of training. We have Bear By training, guides on how to set up suppliers. We have a sample invoice as well, so you can see what it looks like in case you or the community partner needs some guidance. We have a full guide on checking payment status. And also we have the donations and charitable contributions approval process on our website as well. Supply chain management is supported by our customer support team, the response team, and you can submit a question to them using a link. So you can go to our website, supplychain.ucsf.edu, click on the UCSF community button that you see on the right side. It's that section on need help is almost. Click that, it opens up a form and you can put in your question, and then it will create a ServiceNow ticket with that question and route to them to help. They can help you with a variety of payment related questions. If you're not sure how to use Bearbuy, and you used our guides and you just want somebody to talk to help you, through that process, the IT service desk also supports our campus on using Bearbuy. And you can contact them by calling them at 415-514-4100, option 2, or you can email them at appsupport@ucsf.edu. If you have questions about setting up suppliers, the supplier information form, anything about our supplier records, you can also contact our supplier registration team at vendors@ucsf.edu. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, Melissa, thank you so much for that really excellent information. There are some important questions in the chat that I want to bring up and have you answer. But first, I want to just really thank you for your partnership on this over the last couple of years. For those of you who don't know, Melissa's been really engaged for about 2 years in trying to find easier ways to do this work, and has been an incredibly valuable partner. And the fact that we're here with this new mechanism that will be, I think, a lot easier for many of you is totally due to Melissa's efforts. So thank you so much, Melissa, for this. A couple of questions that came up in the Q&A that I wanted to make sure we address. Can you talk about what kind of assistance we can expect from the buyers in supply chain to help with when payments get stuck? I think some people have run into challenges with payments getting stuck, but not knowing what's wrong and not knowing how to correct it. So can you talk a little bit about how to ask for help from, I know you put up the resources for the help desk, but how can folks who are trying to get these payments through work with the buyers and communicate with the buyers using the right language to make sure that their questions get answered about how to address what's holding up a payment?
So I believe maybe some of the background of buyers, which is typically our procurement team. And just for background, they do work on purchase order transactions with suppliers. So some of you may have not used the payment request form and used maybe an amount-based form or some other form, maybe professional services type of form to submit your request. And that goes to our procurement team. And I know there's been questions, about insurance and other requirements that they have. And that's maybe where you got stuck. So this process is going through the payment request form. It doesn't actually go through procurement. So it just needs approval within your department. And then it will route to my team to review to make sure all the documentation is complete. And then we will approve it and then payment is issued. So it's definitely a more streamlined process. You don't have to create purchase orders for community partner payments. I mean, I did go over some other types of payments that are not covered under community payments, like those may need to go, or some of those may need to go to our procurement team. But for community partner payments, it goes through the payment request form, and you don't have to meet the procurement requirements that they may have. So if you have any questions about payment, you can definitely contact our response team. They are dedicated to answering our customers' questions. They're aware of, the initiatives that we've been trying to do for the last few years, and they can definitely help you identify where a payment is at, whether it's still in the requisition, let's say it's still pending your department's approval, or maybe you expected someone to submit it and hasn't been submitted yet. Or maybe it's pending us, and they can help you look up, in the transaction. Maybe there's comments from my, team. They're saying, well, we only have this documentation, but it says nothing other than pay this person, right? So we may be asking a lot of questions, and our response team can help you navigate that process. So they're always, available. Just submit the question, to them, and they will get back to you and help you answer that question.
Great. Along those lines, there have been a few questions about how if folks have been using POs and Transepta to pay their community partners, like for cabs or other, activities that fit in this category, how can they transition their those payments to using this mechanism? Do they need to close the PO? Can they do that? What are some of the things, advice you have about transitioning from the use of POs and Transepta to the community partner payments?
If it works for you, that's fine. You can continue doing that process. I mean, I don't want to disrupt things, right? If something is working, but if it's not something that they want to do, let's say it was arduous to do that, and you renew your POs, and you're going to experience barriers. You can you can close your PO so that you don't have it open, and then you can start submitting the request through the payment request under the community partner payment activity type. So you definitely can do that. But again, it's, we're open to options. If something is working, you want to continue it, that's fine. If you want to use the payment request, that's fine as well.
Great. Is there a maximum amount that can be paid through this mechanism?
So I think we're not setting the maximum or even minimum. I think CTSI has some recommendations on how much to pay, but it really is up to our campus community. I think it should be reasonable. I mean, that's why we ask for the documentation that explains, why you're making the payment, what they are doing, so that it also justifies the payment. So as you know, we're a public institution. So we're subject to, laws, regulations. We get, funding from many outside sources, donors. So we want to make sure that we are responsible with our money. So, if you're thinking, hey, the community partner gave us some advice, we're going to pay them $1 million, you say that's probably not reasonable, right? So any payment that you make, you want to make sure it is reasonable. You have documentation, for it, to, show that we are responsible, and yes, we are compensated.
Some community partners, particularly community-based organizations, but also some individuals, do multiple things for multiple different parts of UCSF, right? Do you have guidance on how, and when they get payments, sometimes they'll get payments with no indication what it's for. Do you have any guidance? I have some ideas too, but do you have ideas on how to help community partners track what payment is for what, or how we can be proactive on our end to make sure that community partners know what the payment is for?
So, we do, or you may have someone who's actually doing a service, right, that is consulting and has a purchase order, and they're probably issuing invoices. So when we do send the payment to the suppliers, typically we do reference their invoice number. So that's one way they can reconcile those payments. Now, the community partner payments that are being submitted through the payment request form, they don't have a lot of information. But if there's some keyword that you want to put in the invoice number, that works as well. I mean, our suggestion is to put a date, but because we don't have any, reference number, that's where we're suggesting a date, but you can put something there. And also you can put a payment message, if you want to, but just make sure you say yes and you put a clear message. We can put that on the payment, but of course it does take time for us to put that on there. So that's just something to keep in mind, right? If it's needed, you can ask for that. If it's not needed, you don't want to be like, okay, by default, I'm going to put it on everything. So that is the ways that the payee
There
you go.
Do you want to talk a little bit, since we do have a few minutes, do you mind talking a little bit about how some of the things that are not included on this list couldn't get paid? So, what would require going through the honorarium process, and what might require a PO?
Right, sure. So honorarium, it is very specific, and this is tied to UC policy and how they wrote it. So generally, these are payments for individuals that have some scholar standing and they're working on an academic activity such as a lecture, or seminar, workshop. They're a guest speaker, sometimes at commencements. There's an appraisal of a manuscript that is submitted to a professional publication, and there's exceptional requests for distinguished teaching or a special service. So it's very, very specific. These community partners just don't qualify under these, but the payments of those are very similar. It is through the payment request form. It's just a different activity type, honorarium. And also we have like requirements on our webpage that talks about that. So it's just, I know people have commingled honorarium and also community partners. And I know that's caused some confusion. So we really want to make a distinction between the two. So now we have two different activity types, guidelines for both types of payments to separate them out. The other items on here are consulting service payments, payments linked to a defined scope of work for professional services. Those are the ones that have to go through our procurement team, where there's a lot more requirements. Sometimes there's contracts, there's insurance requirements sometimes. So I know sometimes the services kind of are a little gray, but if it is considered one of these items, they should go on the PO and they cannot come through the community partner payment process that we talked about. And this is tying back to university UC system-wide policy on purchasing, that those types do need to be reviewed, sometimes have contracts and have purchase orders, in order for those to proceed. Research participant payments, they're paid through different channels. We issue check requests, gift cards, and we're implementing some new payment methods as well, but those are not community partner payments, so they cannot be paid through Bearby or the payment request form. And finally, payments to faculty or staff. We only make payments to non-UCSF employees. Generally, faculty and staff payments go through payroll. So that's why we put that we do not make those type of payments.
Thanks, Melissa. That's really clear. And again, we do have some a kind of table where we've laid this out, how to pay different kinds of work that we will share as on the community engagement.ucsf.edu website. Melissa, can you talk about paying international partners? That's a question that came up.
Yes, so generally most of our community partners are domestic, but we do have some that may not be. So in the link that I have, I actually linked to a forms listing page where we have different forms depending on whether the person is a U.S. Resident or they may be a foreign individual. So the foreign individuals do need to go through a different process. The form is called the W-8. I think for organizations, I think it's called the W-8-BEN-E. So they just need to complete that form and then return it back to us. The process is very similar. The forms are just different. The IRS has different requirements, for different types of individuals. One thing to keep in mind, taxation also may be a little bit different for foreign individuals as well. So that is something to consider as well.
Yeah, thank you. That question's come up a few times in the last couple of weeks, so I really appreciate you addressing that. Can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned other mechanisms to pay research participants. I think one of the things you might have been referring to was the use of cash apps like ClinCard and Venmo and other mechanisms like that. Can you talk about the possibility of that for compensating community partners and what some of the work is that's going on around that?
Sure. So just to give you some background, Cash App, Venmo, and also Greenfire ClinCard are projects that we've been working on, and the Cash App and Venmo is something that the Controller's Office has been working on. So generally, those are mechanisms of the Controller's Office and different areas in the future. I think the Cash App and Venmo has not actually been it still is in pilot as far as I know. So I think that's more of a future conversation. But what we have right now is to issue payments, through the payment request form. And I think I see a question about ACH, and that's actually what I was going to bring up as well. To help with payment, we are currently, when individuals have bank accounts that are personal, we typically just pay through check. But we have been engaging with our central UCSF IT, who manages our financial system, PeopleSoft, where payments are actually issued, to our bank, to see if we can make ACH payments to the personal banking account. So that will make the payments a lot faster for individuals who do not have a business account. So that is the way we're looking to speed up payments, rather than using Cash App and Venmo, which are things that are still being evaluated and may not be as immediate as maybe making payments through ACH. We tried some tests, but IT ran into some system issues. So we are actively working with them to see if this is a possibility, within our PeopleSoft system.
That would be amazing and would address definitely some of the concerns around how long it can take. And again, just want to thank you so much for your leadership and work on these different aspects, Melissa. I want to acknowledge that this is not a perfect method for every community partner. We know that there are partners who are unhoused and don't have an address, or who have other challenges receiving mail, or for whom, a check is not the most ideal way of payment. We acknowledge that there are still challenges with this mechanism, and it is a vast improvement. And we continue to work with Melissa and the supply chain management team, as well as the other people involved in the sort of regulatory and compliance aspects of this work, to continue to talk about ways to improve our approaches and improve the ways that we are able to compensate our community partners equitably for the work that the really, essential and integral work that they're doing, and contributions they're making to our research enterprise. And, no one method is going to be perfect for everyone, I think. And our hope is that they, by formalizing this method, and still having other options, like like POs, like honoraria, that there will be more of a menu of options that will meet more people's needs. Is that fair to say, Melissa? We're trying to get it so that there are as many options to meet as many people's needs as possible.
Right. Definitely. We're always looking at improvement, right? And so thank you, Rana, for your partnership in this process and working through this. So, I think we're always looking at continuous improvement and what can and cannot be done.
Yeah. Do you want to address this question? If we're organizing a consulting service with a new supplier.
So I can speak a little bit to that.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
It's a truly a consulting type of work. It does need to be on a purchase order, and we have some materials on our website. And actually, we had a webinar also to talk about what is the different types of payments, covering honorary and also what goes on a PO. So that can give you some guidance in terms of what avenue to go through. But if you're not sure, right, and you need some help, you can also contact your department assigned buyers. Every department on campus has one, and you can look it up on our website, and you can ask them, I have the situation. If it's consulting, ask if they can give you some guidance. And if they determine it's not a consulting and it is a community partner, you're just asking them to do some work, then you can submit it through the payment request form under the community partner payment activity type. So it really is determining what exactly are you doing, and defining or classifying, what type of transaction it is, and then that will help you determine how do you need to submit it.